I'm pleased to introduce our SharePoint expert, Jason Slack. Jason is a junior application support engineer here at GadellNet and has been with us for a little over a year. He is on the application team and has a strong passion for SharePoint and the benefits that it can bring to all of our clients. So as we are heading into the webinar, please feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions during or after Jason's presentation. We will address those questions at the end. We will also be recording today's webinar and we'll send the recording out after the call. So without further ado, Jason, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, great. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. Today we're going to go over one of my personal favorites, technology that I'm passionate about and has a lot of benefit for today's world and today's workforce, SharePoint. Let's go ahead and get started. Can everybody see my screen okay?
We can, yep.
All right, very good. The agenda we're going to go over today, we're going to talk about the current state of SharePoint. We're going to look at file server, traditional versus a SharePoint in the cloud. We're going to talk about external sharing and security. We're going to touch on OneDrive, and then we're going to go over the benefits of automation. What is SharePoint? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot and has a lot of confusion. Microsoft SharePoint is really a browser-based collaboration and data management software solution. It's really designed to connect all your employees and the business resources together. SharePoint allows everyone to collaborate and synchronize daily business tasks and responsibilities from a centralized software platform. It handles virtually any type of document. It's frequently used to consolidate and store various types of documentation, drawings, videos, schematics, photographs, workbooks, Excel sheets, etc. You probably already noticed that Microsoft and most other major players are moving towards cloud computing and offering these various online services. Well, SharePoint wasn't skipped. Microsoft offers SharePoint Online as part of the 365 suite. SharePoint has gained a huge amount of ground over the course of the past year. According to Microsoft, SharePoint Online deployments were up by 167% last year. What this data really tells us is that the organizations are leaving older versions of file servers, traditional intranet websites, and other file shares behind in favor of using SharePoint. It's more modern, has better cloud functionality, the collaboration features, and the file server options. Traditionally, it's used for these that we see here on the slide: collaboration, document management, project management, business intelligence, marketing, or the standard company intranet. Some of the pros and cons going over SharePoint versus a traditional file server. The first one would definitely be the access that you have to these files. When you migrate your files to SharePoint Online, what you're giving your employees and the company is access to the content across all devices, whether they're at home, at the office, on their way to a meeting, sitting in a presentation, on any type of device. They can do a laptop, tablet, mobile phone. This is something that most regular file shares have trouble doing. One of the biggest and one of my favorite is the search muscles that are available inside of a SharePoint document library. One of the biggest reasons for doing this and planning properly in the migration process is how we will move the files and how they will be named, including the metadata behind them. This allows us to search by the name of a document, by a keyword in the text. We can pull up relevant results in seconds. When you take into account the sheer volume of content that you guys are dealing with every day, this is a huge, huge time saver. Another great feature is the check-in, check-out. Often you're working with files and documents like with multiple people. It can be a hassle to know who's working on the same document that you've been assigned to, or who may need to input a few last-minute changes before you start your task. In SharePoint, you have the ability to check out a file. That means you basically lock it. Others can't access it. Everyone is able to see who the latest version of the document is with. This just makes sure you're not going to cannibalize each other's efforts basically on the file. Another huge thing, version history, backup protection. In SharePoint, there is absolutely no need to create multiple versions of a single file and rename it every time. I'm sure everybody's seen it. I've done it too. I used to do it as well. You know, version 1, version 2, version 3, 1.1, etc., stitched to the end of a file name. When you have that many versions, it gets absolutely confusing. I can tell you from a collaboration standpoint, and honestly, after time, it just clogs up space. Remember the volume of content that you're working with. When you have one version of a file, obviously a huge saver, a huge time saver, and a space saver versus 137 versions of a document that went through multiple iterations. In SharePoint, you can also take advantage of the version history, meaning we only ever need to work on this one file. When you edit and save the document, the old version, before you saved it, is still there invisibly in the background. You can go into the version history, click of a button, you can restore it, change, something got corrupted, you can go back multiple versions and restore it. Out of the box, they save 10 versions of the document. This can be changed and manipulated to be whatever we want it to be. And recently, in the single copy, too, is your documents in one place. Instead of sending your document out all over via email, it's in one location for everybody to come to see. That means there's not multiple copies of the same file in different people's inboxes, as somebody may not have the most updated version versus someone else, or on their hard drives being backed up over and over and over again, once again, just taking up space. The one version is in the right place all the time. That provides the utmost clarity for the team. I can tell you recently, I just finished the first phase of switching an on-premise file server to a SharePoint cloud-based solution for one of our clients. This was a huge savings for them because they were at a position where they were going to have to replace their on-premise file server. They didn't have to pay for it to replace it. The server was old. They could basically just decommission it. There's no reason to have it anymore or pay for the power for it. We move all the files to the cloud. Everything is up in SharePoint. Then they basically get access to all of these features that we're talking about. This also allowed them to create multiple levels of security groups that we could really drill down into a granular level on who was getting what and who had access to what. Now let's look at some external sharing, or what I like to call why security really matters. SharePoint Online has global and site collection settings for external sharing. The organization level settings, they override anything at the site collection level, and they also do affect OneDrive too. Now, we have them broken down into 4 major groups. These are also multiple subcategories underneath these, so these can be more granular as well. You can set up no external sharing, which means sites and documents obviously can only be shared with your internal users, basically anybody that has a 365 subscription. We can set up share with external users in your directory. So basically users that have already saved into your 365 user directory, they've previously accepted an invitation, or users that you've imported from another 365 or Azure AD tenant, they'll have access. You can also share with external authenticated users. That basically means that they have to have a Microsoft account in some fashion. It could be a 365, an AD account, it could be a Hotmail account or MSN account, as long as they can log into Microsoft and be authenticated. When they're shared, they're now, once they're logged in, they're not required to log in anymore. They get a one-time code they use to verify their identity. And then sharing with anonymous users, the least secure. Documents and folders can be shared with an anonymous link that basically anyone with the link can either view or edit the document. All of these sharing capabilities, you can have them view or you can have them view and edit. The list that we're talking about here on the screen is basically from the most to the least restrictive. Whichever way you guys go, the more restrictive functionality is still available. For example, if we choose to allow sharing with anonymous users, we can still share with authenticated external users and users already in our directory, including internal. Another reason that I really like this type of build out when it comes to security is that if we have confidential information that we don't ever want to be accessed by external users, we can actually have more than one site collection where external sharing is turned off. We could have one site collection that is completely broken down in these individual categories that can be shared externally or not. And then we have another site collection where external sharing is turned off. That way, regardless of who tries to do what and next share it outside of your organization, they can't. We can create additional site collections as needed for sharing. Basically, this helps us manage the security risk by preventing access to this kind of sensitive information. Next up, we talk about OneDrive a little bit. I often get asked about the differences between OneDrive and SharePoint. And basically, OneDrive is just a single document library that's inside of a single SharePoint site collection. It's just got a different logo on it. OneDrive is really meant for personal storage and use. Each person inside of the organization gets their own OneDrive via their 365 account, and each account comes with a terabyte of space. So there's no real issue about running out of room. OneDrive is perfect for files that you're working on. Um, it's perfect for files that are still in process. There's a simple set of guidelines that I like to call the document circle of life. When you start drafting your file, you save it in your OneDrive account. When you're finishing it, you're working out of OneDrive. When you're ready, then you can move your file to the SharePoint team site where your colleagues can provide input, review it, make changes. Whenever the file is completed and ready to be shared completely out for public consumption, then you publish it out to your team site or your main communication site, whatever it is. But basically, you keep a working copy inside of your team site, so updates are easy to make and kept private from the rest of the world before you send it out to the main communication site. There are a few key differences between OneDrive and SharePoint. 365 subscribers have access to SharePoint. There's no free consumer version. You have to have a 365 account. SharePoint allows us to store, share, edit files, but really SharePoint is usually the jumping off point for like larger scale office-based collaboration versus Teams. OneDrive is really considered more of a holding tank for file storage before it goes out to SharePoint. Now let's look at some automation. This is the big one. Everybody loves to save money. That's where it's at. Automation. Workflows helping people collaborate on documents and manage these tasks inside of a SharePoint site. The first big hit, of course, saving money. A business process automates software. It's quicker, it's more efficient, it saves time, and therefore money. If nothing else, this should be enough reason to invest in some workflow automation software such as SharePoint. It also removes the risk of human error. I mean, unfortunately, people make mistakes. That's how it works. Slow sale approvals, late payments, Billy didn't sign the email fast enough, late payments, errors, inefficiencies. These all things all cost money, and they cost money to fix. With workflow automation, we can show the current state of any item, where it's at in the flow, who has the next assignment to it. It leaves no more excuses for making mistakes. It is all completely automated. It empowers your employees. I mean, let's face it, nobody likes to micromanage or be micromanaged. The whole purpose is to save time. That time means that your employees can focus their efforts on more valuable work, things that they actually have to have the human touch to. The great thing about software is it doesn't get bored doing the same thing over and over again like I do. I'm sure like you do too. Streamlining the process. We offer a single streamlined process in a dashboard view. Workflow automation will undoubtedly uncover new ways of working. That in turn can improve the actual business process and improve how the company itself thinks. Automated workflows will improve your efficiency, period. It enables a hierarchy, not in the organizational sense. I mean, I'm sure everybody already has this. I have a manager. I'm sure everyone does it some fashion. But a business process workflow tool will have approval hierarchies, and they're basically self-implemented from the design process. That means managers don't have to stress over each step of the process, and employees can get their projects approved with confidence. You know exactly what step of the process it's in. It allows you to stay in the know. An effective business workflow management system can send email notifications. I can set it up to do mobile push notifications, email reminders. Users are far more likely to abandon and forget a platform if they're not reminded to use it on a regular basis. So we set up these notifications so they continuously know the stage of this workflow, where it's at. Is it time for me to take action? Who just took action? They also have the option to customize the kind of notifications that they receive, so we can make it all unique for each individual person. Maybe somebody doesn't like to get emails on their phone. Maybe they only like text notifications. We have multiple options that we can set up. It enforces compliance. This is a big one. Workflows are perfectly suited to this. The relevant tasks are completed on time, every time, when they need to be. It's repeatable, it's fault-free, it is perfectly suited for a compliance-based process. It improves the process itself. We touched on this a little bit when we're talking about streamlining the process, but automated workflows are going to improve your efficiency up to tenfold. The return on investment is huge here. In conclusion, diving into the world of Microsoft is like, for me, and hopefully for you too, it's like discovering a whole new layer of office-based computing. It's a web-based platform. It integrates everything that in the Office Suite 365. It fully integrates with OneDrive. I've done multiple integrations with Microsoft Flow and Forms. The ability to create sites, pages, workflows using SharePoint, it opens up an entire new world of organization, collaboration, and centralization. If you're interested in leveraging this powerful tool, just let us know. I'd be happy to help advise you on how SharePoint and GadellNet can help power your mission.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. We don't have a huge group on the phone. We can either if you have a question, you can type it in chat, or if you want to unmute your phone. I think that again, since we don't have a super large group, we could probably manage questions that way as well. So, with that said, does anybody have any questions about SharePoint for Jason?
Don't be shy.
I was gonna say not one, not one.
Well, I'll take that to mean that it was very thorough, because otherwise I'll feel bad. No, but really, if anyone has any questions or anything about it, or they'd like to know more about it, you can reach me at the number on screen, shoot me an email, get a hold of Callie or Carrie. They can forward me your contact info. If you have any questions or anything about it, I'm happy to help and happy to walk through what it could and can't do in some cases.
I do have one question for you, Jason.
Sure.
Can you share outside of your organization?
Absolutely. And it can be done on the most granular level by an individual document, or on a large scale level by creating a SharePoint site that's actually able to be shared externally to a whole group of external users. So you can take it from the biggest to the smallest.
All right, thank you.
You can
Any other questions?
You can share it out by links. We can share it out by anonymous links. We can share it out so it's view only or edit capabilities. I just recently set up an FTP type of site for file sharing with a client, and one of their other clients that they worked with. So basically, it's locked down except for the marketing department at each place. Question, Rick. I don't see it replacing old-fashioned servers, but up to and including file servers themselves, absolutely. I do believe that we will see this cloud-based computing as the replacement. There's no reason for it not to be. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, it has more features, it costs less money, it takes less to maintain it.
Hey, Jason, he might have chatted you
Oh,
directly. Can you just say what his question was? I'm sorry.
Sure. 1 second. Yeah, it was in the chat.
That's okay.
He was asking if we see SharePoint replacing old-fashioned servers.
Okay. And then there's another one from Keith. Does Microsoft Teams work well with SharePoint as well?
Absolutely. And here's where, and follow me along because this gets a little bit convoluted. Every time you create a new team in Microsoft Teams, it also creates a new team site in SharePoint. That's what SharePoint is, basically the heavy lifting. It's the muscles behind Microsoft Teams and Microsoft OneDrive. Now, when you create this team in Microsoft Teams, it spins up your SharePoint site for team. It spins up a document library. These are all accessed through Teams, but they can also be accessed directly through SharePoint if you like. And that's where you really can get into a lot of the more advanced functionality of it. Teams basically is a nice, pretty graphic user interface that lays on top of a SharePoint site.
All right, great. Any other questions?
And once again, everybody, I apologize for running late. I had to take care of a client, like Callie said. Sometimes we gotta juggle things around to take care of everybody. But I appreciate everybody coming today and talking with me about SharePoint and something that I'm passionate about. And if anybody has any other questions, we can do them.
Yeah, and like Callie had mentioned in the chat, we will send out the recording to everybody as well as the presentation. So if you have any questions after looking looking at the presentation or listening to the recording, don't hesitate to reach out. I think everyone knows how to get a hold of us. So thank you so much for joining. Again, thank you so much for your patience. We really do appreciate it, and we hope that everybody has a great rest of your Thursday.